headline. Let me take that headline off. My goodness.
Hello. Welcome to our first week chat about Hinds Feet on High Places. Give a holler if you're here. As of right now, my StreamYard says 0. I'm sure that will change. Oh no, 14. Boom. There's 14 people. So give a shout out if you're here and where you're from. I'm gonna I'm really excited to talk about the first 8 chapters, Hinds Feet on High Places. Do you guys have? I would love to see what version you guys have.
I listen to the audio, so I don't have a physical copy.
Okay, cool. Oh my word, look at your vintage.
I like yours, Oceana.
So cool. I have another one as well, but I just like this one is really cool to read from because it's just beautiful. Like the whole experience is beautiful. Hello. Amanda's here. Cubby, call me Cubby. So Cubby's here. Lindsay's here. Katie. Lisa is here. Yay, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Stephanie is here. Kim is from Virginia. Woo, go Virginia. Hello. Shelly from Ohio. Yes, Amanda, I saw your picture of that. Hello, unicorns. Chrissie, you're so cute. Southern California. Hannah. Hello. I love it. Thanks for hanging out with us this afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and have these ladies introduce themselves, and we're just going to like dive right in because we're going over 8 chapters today, and that is probably going to be a lot of chat because I made lots. I'm not an annotator, but I'm like, ooh, let's talk about this, and ooh, let's talk about this, and ooh, this really stood out to me. I even underlined. Listen, I wasn't joking around. I used a purple pen to underline. I'm not just penciling this. This is good stuff. So I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about along the way. And in the comments, please also feel free to, we're going to kind of fly through chapter by chapter, but things that stood out to you, quotes that were meaningful, things that it made you think about. But to start us off, we're going to go around and have everybody share their name and their channel, introduce themselves in case you're unfamiliar with them. And also general impressions of the first 8 chapters. So this is an allegory and a little bit different maybe than other things that we read. Is allegory nonfiction? It's not, it's fiction, right? Still considered fiction. So it's not a nonfiction like we have done with other read-alongs, but I thought it would be a good one to do anyways. And so, just kind of general thoughts about the first 8 chapters. Oceana, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Oceana. My channel is Oceana Gotta Read Them All on right there. And I talk about like Christian fiction and just all the kinds of books that I read. I have never read Hinds Feet on High Places before. And I've heard the name before just in my life of being a Christian, but never had the book. But this is actually my grandma's book. So that's why it's so old. It's from 1970 something, 73. So it's really cute. And I did also, actually, thank you, Amanda. She sent me some audio clips on YouTube. So I've been listening to those as well. And it's really beautifully read. So, and so far I like it. I like allegory books about Christianity, just because it's such a different way of learning about God's heart for us. And I love that. So that's me.
Cool. Katie.
Hey everyone, I'm Katie. My channel is Paperbacks and Ponytails, so everything related to books and reading journals and everything. This is also my first time reading Hinds Feet in High Places, and I'm actually listening to the audio, which I am really enjoying because the narrator, I believe she's from England, so she almost sounds like Dame Judi Dench. So she has like this kind of soft-spoken voice that I feel really kind of helps with the story and get you into the story. And I definitely see myself a little bit in this story as well. But I'm enjoying it so far, and I can't wait to continue reading it.
Wonderful. Chrissie.
Hi, everyone. Chrissie's Purple Library. Obviously read all the purple, but no, this is my first time reading Hinds Feet, High Places. And I have to say, I love allegory because I'm a fantasy reader anyway. So any kind of allegory is just my bag. But I will say what I really love about this edition the illustrations. Like there's something about it that really makes me feel a part of like the story of what she's trying to convey about the walk of the believer. And it's just been incredibly impactful for me. I was very surprised by that. I wasn't really anticipating it to really strike a chord in my heart for where I am in my faith right now. And it's amazing. So yeah, it's been great.
Great. Chantel.
Hello. I'm Chantel from Chantel Reads All Day, and like everyone else, thus far, it's my first time reading this book. I heard about it from Holly years ago when she read it and loved it and has raved about it.
Yeah.
And I put it on my list of books to read this year. So then when Krista announced that she was doing this, I was like, well, it's meant to be. I think I would have put it off forever otherwise, because Allegory, I'm 50-50. I either love them or I hate them. That's just how it's been. And so, but so far I am really enjoying it. I also underlined things with a pen.
I love it. And Bethany.
Hi, I'm Bethany from Bethany's Bookshelf, and this is also my first time. So I think it's great that it's most of our first time. But yeah, I'm also a little bit unsure about Allegory sometime, but I'm really loving it. I started it actually last year, just the very beginning, and then stopped because I couldn't quite get into it yet. But this has been really good this time, and kind of taking it a little bit slower throughout the month, I think, is helping me.
Nice. Wonderful. Well, I guess I'm the anomaly because this is not my first time reading this. I read it probably I think I was in high school. So it would have been early 1990s, dating myself here, right? Like early 1990s. So quite a long time ago. But it's been on my shelves ever since then. And I remembered loving it then even. And I do think it's one I could revisit at different stages because of all the different things that we're going to get into a little bit that Much Afraid has to go through. Different parts would stand out to me at different times. I don't think in general, I wouldn't say that I love Allegory, but I'm really enjoying this one. So I'm excited to read it and talk about it with all of you guys. It always makes the reading experience a little bit more full, well-rounded when you can talk about things with other people live, like as we're going, like a big buddy read. So I love it. I heard a couple people are also getting the illustrated edition. Listen, it's only like $10 or $11 on Amazon. It's really not that expensive. If you ask me, it's worth every penny for just the illustrations and the watercolors and there's even I just opened to a page that's like a journal prompt to like help you process as you're reading. I'm not good at that, but they're in there if you do like that kind of thing. Shauna gave us a great definition. An allegory is a story, poem, or picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a moral or political one. Yep. Oh, you found it on Hoopla? Interesting. Oh, that's cool. So you're reading the e-book edition, but you get the pictures because it's on. That's cool. Don't like how it feels my hands. I love that, Brandy. Hinds Feet is my favorite allegory. Read it 3 times. Last time was about 10 years ago. First time reading this too. Also really impacted by the story. Wonderful. So I'm just going to read a verse from Psalms that the title is kind of taken from, I would say. It's Psalms 18:33. It says, I just closed it. He made my feet like the feet of a deer and set me secure on the heights. That's in ESV, so I'm sure there's other versions of that, but the same idea is in Habakkuk chapter 3, and it's fleshed out a little bit more about being given the feet of a deer and being on the high places. So that's in Habakkuk and Psalms. Let's just open our books and get right in. So we're going to just start at the beginning. And go right into chapter 1. I don't know if every version has the preface. This edition has a preface to it. I don't know. Does your Oceana and Chantel, does your book have a preface as well?
Yeah.
Okay. It just kind of gives the little background on how it all got started. And a lot of this comes from Song of Solomon. And that is when it says canticle, I believe that's actually Song of Solomon. I think those are actually taken from Song of Solomon. I didn't go into my Bible and double check that, but if I remember correctly, whenever they sing a song or it says canticle from the song, that is from Song of Songs. We can double check that together, but I'm pretty sure.
That makes sense because some of them, I was like, isn't that in Song of Songs? But what is the word canticle? Where does that even come from? What is that? I've never heard of it before.
Yeah, it means song. I can look.
Does it? Okay, didn't know that.
Yeah, a canticle, I believe that word means a song.
Okay.
I'm going to look up the definition right now just to be sure. Yeah, a hymn or chant, typically with a biblical text, forming a regular part of a church service.
Okay. Literally never heard that in my life.
And then the second definition says canticles is another name for Song of Psalms, especially in the Vulgate Bible. I'm not sure what the Vulgate Bible is, but yeah.
Great.
So it's literally Song of Solomon.
Okay.
Song of Songs, whatever. All right, well, I don't think we need to start with the preface. Let's just jump right into chapter 1. And we're introduced right away to Much Afraid. In your mind, is Much Afraid a person or a deer? Like, as you're reading it, I went back and forth on this so many times. I'm like, okay, is she a deer? Now it feels like it's human. She's holding hands. Like, now it feels like she's a deer. She's lame and can't. I don't know. Like, I keep going back and forth. What do you guys? Do you think about that?
I saw both in the beginning, like at first, because there's a deer on the cover of the book. So I thought, oh, this is about a deer.
Yeah.
And then as I was listening to it, I'm like, okay, it could be a person. And like, I don't think deers have that much of a complicated relationship. So I'm pretty sure it's human.
Yeah, I think I saw her. I had the same sentiment. Like, I saw her as a deer, like allegorically, because the illustrations are like, the forest and you're like, oh yeah, she's a deer and she has a family of deer. And I was like, oh yeah, I could see it, because my fantasy mind is just going. I'm like, oh yeah, she could totally. But no, I think she's a human, especially dealing with like the whole marital thing. I said, it's probably an animal. Yeah. Right. So yeah. I mean, a human.
Right.
Yeah, I had a hard time with that at first, but now that I picture her as a human, it is easier for me.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
It didn't even cross my mind that she'd be a deer, but maybe that's the cover. I got no deer. I mean, she's supposed to get feet like a deer.
Right.
That's what we're working towards.
Yeah.
That part, yeah.
But also, my cover really threw me off. I thought it was like, I didn't realize it was a mountain for the longest time.
Desert is like pyramid, desert. What is going on?
I saw like a part of a dress looking down. Like that was really off. I was so confused.
Abstract.
I love it.
That's so interesting. I definitely pictured a deer the whole time. And I think when holding hands, I just pictured her like standing up and holding, I don't know, like I actually didn't picture a human at all until there was a few human-y things happening. And I'm like, okay, well, it's sure deers can do human things in this book, but
well, that's what I'm like.
It's like a deer that, like, I don't know. Yeah,
it's allegory, right? It can be anything, but that's why I kept going back and forth. Different parts of it, I'm like, oh, I feel like she's a deer now. Oh no, but now I feel like I definitely flip-flopped many times as I read. Anytime it talked about her feet, I was thinking more deer. But then when she was holding hands and relationship side of things, I don't know. In chapter 1, we meet Much Afraid. She's in the Valley of Humiliation. Mm-hmm. What a name for a place to live. And surrounded, she's part of the Fear family. And it's a little bit bleak. but the first thing I wanted to think of, and I didn't ask you guys this ahead of time, so you may not be able to like on the spot come up with an answer. But if you were a character in an allegory, what would your name be? I know we can maybe think about that along the way, but at any point, if you're like, oh my word, that would be my name.
I think as a parent, it would be easier to give each of my kids a name.
Sure.
Than it is to like see all of your shortfalls.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing I thought of instantly was a song by Lauren Daigle called Rebel Heart. And that one always speaks to me. So I feel like that would probably be my name, Rebel Heart, at least in the beginning, because going through my journey and stuff. But I feel like that is a good fit for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's like way to get vulnerable right off the bat. Tell us your deepest, darkest.
That's right.
But just something to think about as you're reading through. I mean, because I know different parts of this will stand out to each of us in different ways because of our personal experience. So maybe that's not something you have to answer for everybody, but yeah, something to think about.
When I first heard about this book and I heard that was her name, that I was immediately like, oh yeah, like I could connect to Much Afraid, definitely. So.
Yeah, see, I don't think of myself as a fearful person. So I'm just like, come on. I keep wanting to like, what's your problem? But there are other things that happened to her along the way that I really am like, oof. I even wrote on a post-it at one point, I'm like, ouch. Because like, that got me. But yeah, fear is not something that I struggle with. So I'm like, I don't even know what would be my allegorical name, but something to think about for sure.
Mine would probably be something close to like discontentment. Always looking for like the next thing or something like that.
Yeah. I think mine probably would be kind of like rejection and maybe a little bit of wrath in there too. Because I think from looking at like my journey, a lot of the rejection and things with like disability and stuff like that, and then being angry about it, you know? So, yeah. Ooh, we're getting deep with these, Krista. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I think something loneliness, I think would be a part in there. When that's some of this, as she gets to the sea of loneliness, there are parts in there that I'm like, okay, and like trust, lack of trust, that might be in there. So I'm like, there are things as we get later into the book that really, I'm like, oh God, had some conviction moments as I was reading, like, oof, I feel like I've felt that way. I don't know. Not to label ourselves with all these things either. Like, I know God redeems and uses all of those things in our life, which we'll get to. But okay, in chapter 1, what stood out to you guys? Anything that you thought about and highlighted as she's just kind of, we're just getting to know her a little bit and her situation. Yeah.
The conversations, I'm pretty sure this is chapter 1. The conversations about love, those are in chapter 1, right? Yeah. And how I've been told that if you really love someone, you give that loved one power to hurt and pain you in a way nothing else can. And that really stood out to me. And I had a conversation with my 11-year-old this week, and he was like, love seems very complicated. We were having a conversation about how it's our selfishness that makes it complicated, because we love someone. We should want to serve and do things for them. But also we really just want to do things for ourselves. Yeah. And so, yeah, that part really jumped out at me in this chapter.
I was reminded of Moses when she first was saying how she's when she's like, I'm too lame, I could never go to the heights with you, I have all like this, that, and the other. I'm like, oh, that reminds me so much of Moses and his conversation with God. Like, how can you ask me to do that? Like, I can't even speak. It just reminded me of that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to narrow in exactly what it is because I highlighted a lot.
I did have a question. So right after the part where he's first telling her, sorry, about going to the high places, and that's when she said she's she's too lame, has despair, self-pity, blah blah blah. But he says, but much afraid, I could make yours like Hinds Feet also, and set you on the high places. You could serve me much more fully and be out of reach of all your enemies. I'm delighted to hear you've been longing to go there, for as I said before, I've been waiting for you to make that suggestion. And I just thought about, like, does God wait for us?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I feel like, yeah, for sure. He doesn't force us to be obedient. And I don't know. I just had that thought, like, when has God waited? When has God had to wait for me to, like, get on board? Like, be ready to do what he's asking me to do.
I feel like no matter how long it takes, he's always like literally just right there in front of us, just waiting for us to take that one little step.
Yeah.
Right. Amen.
Right. Like, he calls us and shows us, and like, here's what I have for you. He makes promises, right? But then we have to receive that and take steps towards that. He doesn't like stuff those things into our lives. Like, he kind of waits for us to take those steps, but he's always ready whenever we are. I don't know. I just thought that was something to think about.
Yeah, I think for me. Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Oh, okay. One of the songs one of the songs that says, "The King found me, an outcast thing, and set his love on me. I shall be perfected by love, made fair as day to see." And like, kind of like what we were talking about, like an allegorical name that really touched my heart, feeling rejected, feeling like, this outcast thing that was just always so different, knowing that the Lord loved me, that he, was waiting for me, and that I can be perfected into who he wants me to be. And then, be accepted and be like, this is how he made me to be, and it's okay, so that was just incredibly impactful too. Just the songs, like the Lord singing over me, his love over us,
Yeah. Bethany, what were you going to say?
At the very end of chapter 1, I highlighted where she said, "Of course I ought to have known that Craven was a coward, and that if only she had lifted her voice and called for the shepherd, he would have," like, that's not exactly what that says, but anyway, that's like keeps coming up.
Yeah.
I feel like in all the chapters, just she's like wrestling with something and then finally calls out to him and he's immediately there.
Right.
I just love that.
I thought too, when she was like not even willing to look up because she was filled with shame at where she had let herself get to, and it says, if only, like, she didn't dare look at the shepherd, but had she done so, she would have seen with what passion he was regarding her. And I feel like, how true is that shame keeps us from fully looking up at God, and just, he's always going to be looking at us with love and not condemnation or anger or whatever. Like, he's just so thrilled that we come back to him. And I thought that, like, shame is what keeps us looking with our heads down and not lifting our eyes to see his face and to look at what he's saying. Before I get to the comments, the one thing I did have a question about, so the whole idea of the love seed being planted in her heart, and like her not realizing the fullness of that love until she reaches the high places. That's the one thing so far that I'm like, like, God, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, God's love doesn't wait for us to love him. In 1 John, like, we love because he first loved us. Mm-hmm. So that's the one, like, so far in this allegory, that's the first thing that I'm like, wait a minute. God doesn't wait to, maybe I don't fully realize it until I fully open myself to love him. But I don't know. I was just like, why did she have to wait for that love to blossom? I don't know. What did you think about that at all?
Is it more so like that's her love growing for the shepherd?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Or I was kind of thinking of it as like her not being able to comprehend until she's been through it all.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it says, I promise, this is the shepherd speaking. I promise you, much afraid, that when the plant of love is ready to bloom in your heart, and when you are ready to change your name, then you will be loved in return. And I was like, then you'll be loved in return? Or then you'll realize that you're already loved. And I don't know, maybe it's more, maybe there just needs to be 2 more words in there.
that's what I was thinking that he was meaning, but didn't want to like scare her off. But I don't know. I wasn't looking for like theological loopholes, right? Like,
Right. Yeah. I thought it was an allegory for salvation. That's when I read it. I was like, oh, so perhaps it's an allegory for when you accept this gift. Right. You accept it into your heart. You accept what Christ has done for you. So I was like, oh, is this an allegory for salvation? How very interesting. So that's kind of how I saw it, as that way, because I'm afraid to take this step because I think about my conversion and it was a very similar discussion. Like, like I'm here for you, but you have to decide to receive this gift into your heart and be willing to go where I tell you to go, so.
Okay. If we take 25 minutes to go through each chapter, we're going to be here forever. So I'm going to quick put a couple of comments and then we're going to move on to chapter 2 and try to go a little bit faster. This was interesting too. I loved that the shape of the seed of love being like a thorn and fit the shape of the scars in his hand. That's pretty cool, Brandy. Found it interesting that mercy and peace live in the village of much trembling. It's interesting. Her being asked, are you willing to be changed completely and made like the new name which you'll receive? Yes. Reminds me of salvation. Yeah. When we have a new name, made new. What's up, Chloe? The thorn is the seed, reminding me of the crown of thorns he wore. Love it. Yeah. God does wait for us. Revelation 3:20 shows him knocking at the door and there's no knob on the outside. Yeah. Oh, no worries, Katie. Just enjoy your storms. If you leave unexpectedly, we'll know what's going on. I think much afraid needs to wait for the love to blossom and become perfected because perfect love casts out all fear. Oh, I love that, Shauna. Yeah. Nice. Okay, so let's move on to chapter 2 and try to go a little bit faster, maybe. I don't know. So in chapter 2, it's right after a conversation with a shepherd, and she's getting ready to maybe go, but not so much. I think the nature writing in here is really beautiful. Like I'm really able to see the scenery and feel the beauty around her, not just in this one, but.
So this is where Mrs. Valiant is introduced.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. I don't have as much underlined in this one. That's okay.
Yeah, that's all that stood out to me. I wondered who she was or like what she represents. If it's like a friend that God gives us, even in our fear and our family that isn't supporting us, that there's someone that we can call on. Because she didn't call on the shepherd when her family was like trying to scare her and take her away. She called on Valiant. And I felt like it came out of nowhere. But so, yeah, I'm curious like what that represents and if she's going to show up again later or if it just was like a one-off that God sent this friend and then where did she go? I don't know.
I love when it's like Mrs. Valiant was not the sort of person to be the least intimidated by what she called a pack of idle fears. Thrusting her face right through the window. It's so aggressive, and I loved it. She cried out in a threatening voice, "Get out of this house, every one of you. If you've not left in 3 seconds, I shall call the chief shepherd." I love it.
Like, it's interesting that she lives here.
Yeah.
In whatever that the fear place is called, or Valley of Humiliation.
Yeah.
Like, but there's someone valiant that lives in it. So that's just interesting to me. Like, why? What does that mean? What does it represent? I can't put my finger on it.
It's like her response, I think, to like where she lives. Like, she accepts it, but like she knows that there's something better and bigger than her situation, and so God makes her valiant and strong enough to face those problems.
Yeah.
So far, I see the book as like the Valley of Humiliation is your pre-salvation time. The walk to the high places is your Christian life. And then you get to the high places, and that's eternity. That's how I view it. So then I'm wondering, like, why is Mrs. Valiant staying in this valley if she is talking about the
I feel like they've talked about the high places. Like, once you're there, you can come back down into the valley and go back up quickly. Like, once you have your Hinds Feet, she's able to go back and forth. So I feel like Valiant is like our friends who are that for us when we're at the point where we can't even pray about the same thing again. Our friend is like, no, I'm going to pray that for you. Or our teachers and pastors and leaders and others who are kind of standing there, or intercessors. My grandma was such an intercessor. She was like a Valiant for other people who didn't have that energy anymore to pray for themselves, or for praying for people who haven't yet started that journey. Maybe. I don't know.
I also reread the first line of chapter 2. It says, "Much afraid, woke early the next morning, and all her fears were gone." And I was just reminded of that verse of God's mercies always being renewed every morning. So like it's a brand new beginning, and she has yet to face what's in the day, but at least in the morning all her fears are gone, and she has a brand new day to start off with.
Amen.
I love that. Oh, ow. Got my phone on my toe. Sorry. I feel like this chapter, though, is a good example of like life coming at you, right? She started the day. Her fears were gone. She was so excited about starting this journey. And then in come her family of annoying fears, doing everything they can to put up every roadblock in front of her that they can, and to convince her, well, you're not worthy. Who are you? The shepherd would never take you. Like, you're just our little much afraid. Like, I don't know. And I feel like that's like life coming at us sometimes. Blow after blow after blow, it feels. And yeah, it's hard to respond and remember. It's hard to remember in those moments, like how we felt in the morning when everything was fresh and new and everything was exciting. And thankfully God gives us friends like Valiant, people that are just a phone call away, a shout away. Hey, because she called out to her, right?
Yeah.
She called out to Valiant, come help me, come quick. She didn't quite know yet enough to call to the Savior, to the shepherd, right? So what she knows is her next door neighbor is going to come and fight for her. So I'll take this moment real quick. In the description, I did put a copy or a link to this Bible study guide for Hinds Feet that has like some really thoughtful questions. And for each chapter, it starts out with a whole bunch of verses that go along with that chapter that can help broaden your understanding as you read through if you're interested. I just found it the other day, and so I added that to the description. we're not really going through these questions. I'm just looking at it just to see if there's something in there that I don't want to miss. But let's go ahead and see a couple comments here. Chapter 2 is relatable when the Lord calls us to do something, but we don't follow through because our fears or doubts or discomfort, cause us not to do what he says. Mm-hmm. I love that. Read that right now. I love that. Valiant is part of God's mercy. The shepherd, it has his servants everywhere. I love it. Mm-hmm. A way that we ask for help and prayers from our brothers. Yeah. The warriors. I will also give that person a white stone with a new name.
I love that verse.
Revelation. That is cool. Well, this is back to the other part. God loves much afraid fully, but she can't receive it as fully as he does because she's still fearful. Yes. Okay. So let's move on to chapter 3. Flight in the night. I'm going to not put banners up because I don't want to have to write them every time. So here, this is a very short little chapter. And she finally gets going. Any thoughts? I didn't underline anything in this one.
Yeah, this one was really impactful for me because I'll just kind of read the note I wrote. Maybe it says, she's talking about, she says she too would go out into the street and the broad highway, would see if she could find him, would see if he had gone and left her behind. Or if it were possible if he had waited to give her another chance. And I find it so beautiful that, the desire to be beloved by Christ and that seed of love that he puts in us, that one encounter that you have with him, it blooms into this desire to know him, to follow after him. And she's literally limping through the streets at night just to get to him. Yeah. And it's like, I think sometimes I might put, or, we might put too much weight on like our process, like, oh, we're not moving fast enough. Oh, I keep struggling, or, but we keep trying to find and to chase the Lord, the desire to be beloved of him, and that was just like, oh, wow, it's okay, So that was very, very impactful. And she found him.
Yeah.
She found, he was standing there waiting and she found him. So it was just so encouraging. So encouraging.
But also too, that it kind of started in fear. Like, she's like, oh no, he was calling and I couldn't go. It's when all of her family was in her house. Yeah. Like, he called, did I miss it? Have I missed my chance? Like, has he left without me? Yeah. So part of it, it's a combination of those things, that desire to be with the shepherd and start this journey, but also that fear of, oh no, like he called. Yeah. And I wasn't able or ready to go at the very second that he called.
Like, that's the real fear. Like,
that's real. Yeah.
Being without him.
Yeah.
This chapter reminded me a lot of Song of Solomon in those verses when she talks about having to go into the town and trying to find her beloved and where is he, and asking all the other people to help her find him. And just really felt Song of Solomon speaking through a lot of these chapters, actually.
Yeah. Well, it's all through there. Canticle. Yep. I just love too that when she finds him, she falls at his feet. She's like, oh man, don't take me with you. Don't leave me behind. And he's just like, I knew you would come. But he doesn't leave it there. He's also like, but why didn't you come when I called last night? Like, he kind of called her to the table a little bit. Like, what was going on? Why didn't you come? Didn't you hear me when I called out? But it was still also full of compassion and love. And the sun was rising. It's such a beautiful little scene. The sun was rising. She's like, and then she just says, I'm here now. I'm here. And I'll go with you anywhere. I just thought that was really beautiful. I'm like, I could see the cinematography of all of that happening. Yeah.
I see one of the comments quoted a little bit after, Chrissie, what you were saying, where she was so motivated to go find him that fear wasn't even a question. Like 100 craven fears wouldn't have deterred her. For the pain in her heart had swallowed up fear. And earlier, I think in chapter 1, I think it was the shepherd that said love and pain go together.
Mm.
And so I think that's really interesting too, that I guess when we feel like maybe we've missed what God called us to do, or whatever, we feel like we know we messed up and now we want to make it better. And we want to make it better because it hurts when we mess up. And, we wish that we had done it the first time he called, but that pain almost like drives us to go find him and follow him again. And the fear of whatever is holding us back, it's not strong enough against the pain of like, but I want to follow God though. Like I need to.
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting that they put love and pain together in this book, because it seems so accurate.
Yeah. And it was a beautiful, beautiful scene. Yeah, if she had called, he would have banished them all. So true. She's got to learn that. She will. By the end of chapter 8, she's kind of gotten the hang of that. Falling at his feet. Yeah. Beautiful. I love it. All right. Let's move on to chapter 4. Oh man, this is where I start going crazy. I have lots more underlined from here on out. But yeah, we're starting off the journey now. I loved just the imagery of the wildflowers. Such a little flower, but like covering the whole field. Love is spreading a carpet of flowers beneath your feet. Humble yourself and you will find that love is spreading a carpet of flowers beneath your feet.
Yeah, and they say that, or the shepherd says, nothing my father and I have made is ever wasted. I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yep. And I love it, like continuing on with just the idea of the small things, the smallest victories. And he says, all the fairest beauties in the human soul, its greatest victories and its most splendid achievements are always those which no one else knows anything about or can only dimly guess at. Every inner response of the human heart to love and every conquest over self-love is a new flower on the tree of love. It's like all of those hidden things, the hidden victories that we have that nobody else really even knows about. That is the most beautiful thing. Those little changes, those little victories in our lives.
I highlighted so much in this chapter, but the part where, so she just like met sorrow and suffering, and it said fear she knew only too well, but sorrow and suffering had always seemed to her the two most terrifying things which she could encounter. And that was so relatable to me, because I feel like I have so much fear and anxiety about like potential sorrow and suffering that I haven't even experienced. But then later on, she said, or no, actually the shepherd said, she says, help me to trust you as much as I long to love you. And so that was really good for me right after, like relating to that.
Bethany, I feel like you're in my head. This little post-it says, relatable. Send me joy and peace. I don't want anything to do with sorrow. And then I underline that other part that you just read with a star too. I'm like, you're just in my brain. But yeah. I feel like in our current, like broad scale Christian church in America, there's such a prosperity mentality. And like a lot of churches don't, my pastor talks about this all the time. He's like, I am going to teach you guys a theology of suffering, because it's a real part of every single person's life, every single Christian's life. Becoming a Christian does not mean that you will not suffer. The Bible says exactly the opposite of that. You will suffer. like when you suffer, this is what to do, but you will suffer. We all will experience it. And so there's so many churches that don't ever address that. It's always just about God's blessing and his promises. And those things are great too. But if you don't partner that with the fact that we're going to suffer, like it's an incomplete gospel. So I do think I thought of that in regards to our churches culturally in the West today. Like we have this idea of we're not going to have to suffer. Not we, but on a broad scale.
I had that section underlined too. That one really hit me. And it made me think of like the father who was bringing his child to Jesus. And he says, I believe, help me in my unbelief. So like you can have both and, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, tough. I love early on in this chapter, still going back to like the nature aspect of things, like talk about the wildflowers. I just love the idea that all of nature, she's listening to the waterfall and like the little stream and thinking of it as, and if she really listens and as the love is blooming in her heart, whatever, she can hear the song that it's singing to the shepherd, right? And I love that idea of all of nature has its own song of love that it's singing. And if we really stop and listen, like when we are full of love for the Lord, how we can also recognize and see that. And I just thought of the verse, even the rocks cry, or well, there was a song I sang as a kid, like, ain't no rock gonna cry in my place. As long as I'm alive, I'll glorify his holy name. But like,
thank you, Krista.
I love the idea of all of nature sings a love song back to the Lord. And I love going, I take my little nanny kids out on walks in nature all the time. I know, Chantel, you take your family out on walks all the time. Like, it's just so cool to recognize not just the beauty of nature, but like God created this and it's doing its job and it's singing its own song of love back to the Lord. I just like that idea.
I think for me, one thing that stood out after Bethany, what you were talking about, he said, help me to trust you as long as I long to love you. And then immediately the shepherd lifted his head and laughed. Mm-hmm. And I thought, like, that was just the most beautiful thing in her vulnerability, in her just wanting to just be who he wants her to be and to trust him. It gives him such joy. And it's like the Lord is pleased when we depend on him. He is pleased when we seek him. We're like, Lord, I just love you. Just show me what to do. He's just pleased by that. And it was like, oh, it's really not that hard, but it is. Like what you were saying, like it kind of is, but it isn't, And so just imagine the Lord in laughter and full joy over us following and growing in him it just makes you feel so loved. Yeah.
And that, like, he gives us a choice, because when she didn't want to go with sorrow and suffering, he's like, you can go back then, like, but these are the friends I've chosen for you. And then this kind of like is a quote from the Bible too, but she says, to whom should I go? Like, where else would I go? You're my shepherd. You're all I have. So I will trust you and follow you. And yeah, I definitely think about that when it feels like this world, it's hard to like feel like truth is just not valued anymore. And sometimes you feel foolish, but I always think like, but where else would I go? Jesus is the way. And so I'll just keep following and trusting and we'll see what happens. But yeah.
The verse that this Bible study refers you to when talking about sorrow and suffering being her guides, it's from Romans 5, verse 3-5. It says, not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. I love that journey, even there in those verses of starting with suffering, how it leads us to God's love. I love it. Bethany is one of your kids in the comments. I love it. What's up? Hello. Bethany's my mom. I love it.
Hey, bud.
I think a theme of this chapter is that the hidden things that are not appreciated are there for God to appreciate. Isn't that cool? I love it. In talking about Chrissie, when you were talking about him laughing just out of joy, I love that verse for a long time, because I'm a singer and I sing in church, and I've always been in singing groups and different things. But in Zephaniah, there's a verse about the Lord delighting in us and singing over us. And it was always so like, whoa, like mind blowing to me, because we sing our worship to him, but then the fact that he sings over us as well is just such a cool idea, and that we can bring him joy. Like, what? Really? Yeah. We're in the valleys. That's when we turn to God most. The Lord went through it because he goes before us. And then, oh, we catch up this week. All right, Melissa, no worries. All right, let's go ahead and keep moving on to chapter 5. Oh dear, pride in his lies. I didn't really underline. Oh no, I did. But I just wrote a big, like, pride lies. Like everything he said was a lie. And that got me thinking, just thinking, because pride is such a personal sin. Like, not people don't always know when you're being prideful or when you're feeling, because it's often inner motivations or inner thoughts. But like, it's never true. Like, you're not better than that person. You're like that. Your way isn't always the right way. Whatever that pride is telling us, it's not always true. And the one part I did underline says, right in the middle of the chapter, she had to learn that once pride is listened to, struggle as one may, it is the hardest thing in the world to throw him off. Like, oh, dang. Because I know I have been in the clutches before. And it's not an easy thing. Like, because it's going to hurt when, pride comes before a fall. That's in the Bible. Like, in order to get that gone, there's going to be some pain involved. And then I also just wrote towards the end, when it was talking about all the things he was saying, I'm like, pride always attacks us at our weakest points. The places where we're feeling insecure or not strong, that's where pride's going to come in and like get its claws in, where our pride's going to rise up. Ugh.
I loved that part too. I feel like I've read a book before, or like a Bible study, that has talked about how like insecurity is like a form of pride, or can be, like, and so the fact that he was like telling her like you're blemished, and I don't know, like I just thought that was so interesting how the insecurity and pride went together at the end there.
Yeah, I saw this too. This is the first instance where we see her calling out to the shepherd in the midst of the struggle. A desperate cry for help, calling up to the mountain. Come to me, come quickly, make no tarrying, oh my Lord. And immediately the shepherd showed up, which I think is so cool.
Yeah, it made me think that only the shepherd could have saved her from pride.
Mm-hmm.
There was no one else that would have been able to get her out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is how it works as a Christian too. Like we just have to like repent and fall at his feet when we know we've been so prideful, because like what else can we do? Because pride is literally us thinking we're better than we are.
Right.
And so yeah, it's Jesus is the only one.
Yeah. And then the image that afterwards, I mean, she willingly at that point took sorrow and suffering's hand, but felt more real. That sorrow and suffering like was even more painful because it wasn't clouded by the lies of pride. Like, she limped more painfully than ever. Pride had trodden on her feet the moment she called for help and left them more lame and sore forever. Like he kind of leaves some sorrow behind, some suffering behind.
I was so like proud when she did call on the shepherd though.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what was going to happen. So I thought like, oh, I hope she gets out of this.
I love it. I'm like rereading as I'm like, stop, Krista. Keep going, keep going. All right, anything else for chapter 5? I mean, there's good questions in this thing, like, has pride ever snuck up on you, ambushed you with a kind and friendly manner? Obadiah 1:3 says the pride of your heart has deceived you. It plays on her fears. Yeah. So there's good questions in this. Susan says, excited about this book. Yay. Thanks, Susan. Hope you can catch it later. The sentiments in pride's mouth are everything we all go through, especially the shepherd will leave her alone. Yeah. They're not true, but they reflect what we're thinking, right? Like, yeah. Pride crept in when the path became easy and she had let go of her guide's hands. Good reminder to stay present and mindful. Yeah, we're going to see that again in a couple chapters from now, which is so true. Someone said earlier, like in the valley is when we're much quicker to call out to the Lord. And when things are going a little easier, we kind of let up a little bit, which is true. All right. So now we are headed into the desert, which is rough because now she's like, wait a minute. The high places are over there and you're bringing me over here. This isn't the way to get, aren't we going there? Like, which is real life too sometimes. Like, wait a minute, God, I thought we were headed down this road. So yeah, detour through the desert. What stands out to you in this chapter? I'm just going to start with Amanda's. This chapter is so relatable as a special needs mom. I'm so impatient and trying to learn patience with so many things. It's not contradiction, only postponement for the best to become possible.
I really loved the whole scene of like her surrendering and it just made me want to think like, oh, have I fully surrendered my life to? Because I think it said like she got a pebble from the ashes, and the line for how could she ever forget it or the anguish of that first surrender. So it made me think like there's going to be more surrenders to come, and there definitely is throughout life. So yeah, I was just kind of like encouraged by that, I guess.
Yeah, I loved the memorial stones, and we see her pick up her first 2, I think, in this chapter.
Mhm.
And just the idea of something tangible that's a reminder of something that God has brought us through. Whether that's just a photo or I don't know. Do you guys have anything like that? Do you literally pick up a stone? But like we do when we go to the beach, we collect our seashells and that's like reminds us of those moments. But I love the idea of like in our spiritual walk, having some kind of a memorial stone, if you will. I don't know. Do any of you guys have something like that already? Just
Oh,
curious.
I have one that has stuck with me. It was when I was 27, I rededicated my life to the Lord. And that was literally the same year I got my first silver hair. And so that's my reminder that it's God's hair. God gave me that hair
Love it.
when it's my wisdom hair that he gave me. So,
That's
so
great.
that's my stone.
Yeah.
I love it.
I love the memorial stones because in the scripture when the people of Israel, when they were getting ready to cross over the Jordan, right?
Yeah.
And the Ark of the Covenant went into the water and the waters went up, and they said the Lord told them to put memorial stones for each tribe.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, so that, and then tell it to your children and your children's children about what the Lord has done. And so I found it. And I think in this, they have like the memorial stones where you think about it. And I began to like think about some memorial stones, like just in my life too, like, you know, and it was just, I really like how she stops and she's like, oh, I'm going to remember that I surrendered this to the Lord. You know, I'm going to remember that I surrendered this desire, this, you know, this pain, whatever it is, to the Lord as a memory. And so as she continues on her journey, even in spiritual walk, it's like, the Lord has delivered me before. Let me just remember these things that he's already done, you know, and you can look back and say, oh, God has been good. He really is keeping his promises. Because I'm not there, but I do have these stones to show me where he's brought me from, you know. So I loved, that was some good allegory right there. So great.
I mean, so many times in scripture, in particular with the Israelites on their wilderness journey, so many times we're called to remember what the Lord has done for us. And that's not just the Israelites, but all through. Like, we're called to remember. And having something tangible helps us with that, right? Does anyone else have anything? I saw some people, journaling is a good way to remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a couple other journalers in the group too.
My 11-year-old son's adoption was a big one, so he's my memorial stone.
Yeah,
there was many prayers and many years put into that.
Yeah,
but I love the idea of having like a physical item to remind you of the times when you have seen the faithfulness of God.
Yeah, I collect little like trinket boxes every time I've gone on a missions trip. I get a box if I'm able to from that country. So those are kind of little memorial memory. I don't put anything in most of them. They're just little. I don't think I have any in reaching distance. Oh no, I have one, but whatever. They decorate my shelves and my whole house because I have quite a few now, thankfully. But they're little reminders of those trips and just what God did during those times.
Yeah. It's beautiful to look back and see like, oh, I'm in the prayers. I'm living in what I prayed for. I'm living, when you look at them, you're like, oh my goodness, Lord. Like I journal as well. Like I think of people in the chat were talking and like, sometimes I go back and there was so many things like getting married and, finishing college. Like it was just so many things like, oh, is it ever going to happen? Mm-hmm. And then the goodness of the Lord and his grace and his mercy, And so it's beautiful to have those, memorials.
Yeah. I think also in this chapter, we have what felt to me very parable-like when she gets to the pyramid and the different floors of the pyramid and the different pictures or images of like ultimately of suffering, right? The threshing floor, the mill, the grinding, and how each different seed requires different grinding. Like, there was 3 of them, I think, right? So the pyramid is there. Okay, there's grinding flour, the ovens for the fire. Maybe there was just 2. I thought there were 3, but I can't remember. It just definitely felt parable-like to me, how Jesus would tell stories, all teaching the same thing. I think of the chapter where it's like the lost coin, the lost something else, and then the prodigal son. Like that chapter has 3 parables, all teaching the same concept. And this was kind of similar to that in my mind. And I loved it. Oh, clay. Yeah, pottery. Clay and the potter. So there were 3. The grinding, the pottery wheel, and the furnaces. And then she sees that beautiful little flower growing up from the floor called acceptance with joy. I love that. And the quote that she says to herself at the very end, he has brought me here when I did not want to come for his own purpose. I too will look up into his face and say, behold me, I am thy little handmaiden, acceptance with joy. And she picked up her second stone. I'd be happy with that name. Acceptance with joy. I don't think it's always true, but I want it to be. Anything else from chapter 6? Yeah, 2 more. All right. Judy's headed out for a family dinner. Oh, I love this. Lindsay takes notes in her Bible for reminders of when and where I've been and where I am now. Love that. Cool. All right. Now we come to Loneliness Lake, or Sea of Loneliness. Oh.
Yeah, I related to this chapter a lot. I think, like, talking about names and stuff, the stuff that self-pity said to her, I related to the most, which was interesting. But I think self-pity and pride are, like, really closely related. So I think it's, like, a little bit of pride, a little self-pity, but I'd be, like, a mishmash of that in my worst state.
Yeah. I think ouch is where self-pity is talking. I'm like, oh. Yeah. But before we even get there, like right at the beginning, I love the idea of when we are walking in obedience, it's then that it's easier to hear and follow easier to hear and recognize God's voice. Like when we're walking in obedience, it's easier to hear him. When we're going our own way, we have our own thoughts and plans on our minds, right? So it's harder to recognize God's voice. But I love that. Whenever you're willing to obey me and to follow the path of my choice, you will always be able to hear and recognize my voice, the shepherd tells us. And it's always safe. I love the word safe. Like it's always safe to obey God.
I love that part too, where it said it's always safe to obey my voice. And I feel like I've heard a lot lately, or somebody saying like the safest place to be is in the will of God. And that just reminded me of that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I was thinking of Chronicles of Narnia when the beaver goes safe. Of course he isn't safe, but he's the king. I mean, it's not going to be safe to walk with God, but it's safe to be with the king. You know, like we're still going to face trials and struggles, even more so when we're with him, but it's always safe to be with him.
It's like a different perspective on safety. Like if
Right.
we want the safety that we want, like for everything to be great and not painful ever, or true safety with him.
I love too the nature imagery of this is so drastically different. When she first started on her journey, it's like the beautiful fields of wildflowers, and then she had to go through the desert. Now it's like Nothing grew there, no tree, no shrub, not even grass. The shores were scattered with broken driftwood and great tangled masses of brown and shriveled seaweed. Nothing lived in the whole region except the gulls, wheeling and crying overhead, and the crabs. An icy wind came. It's such a different, bleak picture of where they're like physically are. I love how she weaves that into like the landscape reflects what's going on as well.
Mm.
Yeah, I liked the part where she's, reflecting, and she says she's looking back across the green valley and where she's come from, and she says, "I was that woman, but am not that woman now." And like how she's now becoming comfortable with sorrow and suffering, like that there's a reason for those things. And even later on, she says there would be a meaning found to all sorrow and an answer too fair and wonderful to be as yet understood. And it was like, wow, this is what Christ meant by following me, suffering with me, like in my suffering, because that's really where we actually understand the love of Christ and like how he loves all of us and how we're to love one another, including ourselves, and so just she's finding beauty in sorrow. She's finding beauty in where she is right there, even if it's uncomfortable. And it's different than what she's used to, and that's just like so relatable. Like even in my life, like looking back, like, oh man, there was some really hard things to navigate through, and deep suffering, but I can look back and say, oh, there was such beauty in that because I got to know the Lord in a way that I would not have known him otherwise,
Definitely. Yeah. I underline that as well because I could totally relate, having walked through some tough situations and recognizing that I might not know the answer to why this is happening now or maybe ever, but being able to see it from a different perspective, to see it from what am I learning from this? How am I growing from this? What am I learning about God through this and myself and my walk with God? Like being able to see those little glimpses of his hand, even in those tough times. It's a hard thing to do because you can get so overcome by the events and the situation. But I love even like she's like finding herself laughing at the crabs and finding that little cove and just appreciating the beauty of this bleak landscape. It starts out describing it as so bleak, but she's finding her moments of joy in it. And the verse, I mean, it quotes the Bible. When he hath tried me, I shall come forth as gold. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. Those are from two different verses, straight from the Bible too. But then, even in that place of loneliness, right? She had let her guard down a bit. Because the path itself wasn't difficult. She was learning to find beauty, and so she was letting go of sorrow and suffering's hand again. And up come good old self-pity and what was the other one? Bitterness and pride again. Boo. I love, though, she's getting quicker to call out for the shepherd. At this, and when they kind of cornered her up on the ledge, she's kind of backed up against the wall, but she didn't even give the other guys time to talk. She's like, nah, shepherd, I need you, come. Like she was much quicker, and she's learning. I like seeing that growth already in her.
Yeah. And she used what self-pity said to her to remember what the shepherd had said the word bruising. And that reminded her of his promise. So then she threw the rock at him. I know that was like really satisfying for her to fight back a little bit.
Yeah, I think the part that I said ouch to, I thought it was self-pity. No, it's when the shepherd is like, no, you kind of got comfortable here and you were learning, you forgot for a while that you were my little handmaiden, acceptance with joy, and we're beginning to tell yourself it really was time that I led you back to the mountains and up to the high places. When you wear the weed of impatience in your heart instead of the flower, acceptance with joy, you will always find your enemies get an advantage over you. I was like, oh,
yeah,
oh, that was yeah. And she admitted it. She's like, I've been thinking that you are allowing me to follow this path for too long and that you were forgetting your promise. But I do tell you now with all my heart that you are my shepherd, whose voice I love to hear and obey, and that it is my joy to follow you. You choose, my Lord, and I will obey. So I love that prayer. Like, yeah. But I'm full on, like, single in my 40s. These words, like, okay, God, like, I've practiced patience. Can we get on with the next step now? Like, I've done it. Like, we've been here in this single land for long enough. Like, where is the promise? Like, let's go on down that road now. Like, I've had so many conversations with God that were this. I'm like, oh, because then it does, like, bitterness, self-pity, like, all of that rears its ugly head. So this particular column of words was like tears. Like, it hit me. I did love when he threw Pred over the cliff, though. That was pretty epic. Oh, man. It's a reminder here how each of these are like the enemy always attacking and trying to get at us and make us question the Lord's goodness when they ask, can you really believe that he loves you? Yeah. Whew. Yeah, I hear you, Melissa. It's not easy. I missed some. The fact that obedience is safe would have meant a lot to Much Afraid because even in her pain, she would find him. Yep. How personalized. Yeah. Beauty from ashes. All right. Anything else from chapter 7? Move on to the last chapter. On the old seawall. Moving away. I mean, the pictures in here are just so beautiful.
Oh, wow.
The water, like, I love it.
Yeah,
quoted, like, quotes from the book written out with beautiful hand lettering. It's just really nice.
Unfortunately, that edition is like over $20 here in Canada. I wish American pricing was possible here.
Ooh. Put it on a wish list, Chantel. You never know. You never know. Yeah, I loved, I've always loved the Psalm. Is it in the Psalms or in Revelation where in talking about heaven that all of our tears are collected and not forgotten. Woo, it's going to make me emotional right now. I just love that. I love that picture, that image, and that's talked about in this chapter too. The heart knows its own sorrow, and there are times when, like David, it's comforting to think that our tears are put in a bottle and not one of them forgotten by the one who leads us in paths of sorrow. Anything else from chapter 8? I didn't underline too much on this one.
I just had where he said, "Build me another altar and lay down your whole will as a burnt offering," and then later on it says, "And again she laid down her will," and I just like how she just keeps having to do it, and it's not like a one-time thing.
Right.
And we're like, oh, okay, we're good. But
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was encouraged when she has to go down another road she doesn't want to, and it feels like it's going to delay getting to the high place again. But where she says, "My Lord, what dost thou want to say to me?" I just was encouraged to think like we can always come to him with our questions, and that there's a good reason for everything. And then he says, "Be of good cheer." So like even this delay, you can still be joyful about it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like so hard. But then further down it says, "This further delay is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that is that the Son of God may be glorified." So that's where like pride, it's so hard to think like, well, I don't care about that. What about me? You know, but that's where we have to like constantly surrender our life and our will to him.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that means waiting longer.
I love the picture of that. It's possible to delight in doing God's will while at the same time experiencing sorrow and frustration, and like it's possible for those to coexist. We don't think of them in the same terms, right? Like sometimes we think of them as one or the other, but that's just simply not true. Like it's still possible to find joy in those tough places. I think having those memorial stone in quote is something that helps with that. Like remembering, it's all about perspective. I think like remembering like God hasn't left me alone here in this place, in this season. And I know that like, for me, it's like in those tough times, like reminding myself of who God is, and like, do I still believe God is good? Do I still believe he's sovereign? Do I still believe this, that, and the other? And reminding myself of God's character, even in the midst of this dark period of time or whatever. I like that picture that it's possible to have both. Like be glad for following and be glad to be in a place of obedience, but still struggling.
Right. Exactly. A picture of suffering and sorrow in her hands.
Right, literally in her hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, right beside her.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting because it reminded me of like this kind of like a memory memorial of like deep sorrow. And I was like sitting at my window, and it was like spring, it was turning into winter. And the Lord, he said to me, he was like, winter is coming, but you'll bloom again, you know? And I feel like sometimes in my life, like I experienced a miscarriage like a few years ago. And, you know, having a child is something that I still, you know, desire of the Lord. But with that, it's like, well, Lord, clearly you have a purpose. It's for your glory. And whether that comes to fruition or not, you are the thing that I want to attain. Like your approval, your love, like that has to be priority, you know, but it's hard to sift through that when you desire things, God, you know, things you want to desire, godly things. That probably makes it burn a little bit more, you know. Oh Lord, this is something I'm supposed to want, you know. And he has his way is just better than our way. How he gets us there is better than how we would get ourselves there, because I have burned my life up and he had to come put it together. So you know, sorrow and all those things together, you know, make for a wonderful testimony to encourage someone else, right? To help each other. So,
yeah,
for
sure. Our tears are washed away. Pretty big bottles for those tears sometimes.
Yeah.
So true, Lisa. Another reminder that delay does not mean now, no, or never. You keep track of all my sorrows. You've collected all my tears in your bottle. You've recorded each one in your book. Shauna is our resident, like, Bible scholar. Like, she keeps bringing the verses. So thank you, Shauna, for, I mean, we were talking about them, but you find the actual verse. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Acceptance with joy in imagining our tears being washed away. And God shall wipe away all the tears from their eyes. No more death, neither sorrow nor crying. Neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Hallelujah. It's wanting him more than even the desires of our hearts. Fulfilled by the Lord. Oh, I love it. Sometimes easier said than done on some days, right? But that's going to wrap us up for today. We will be back next week to talk about chapters 9 through 16, which brings us to the end of part 1. So this brings us to the end of part 1, and then there's only 4 chapters for part 2. So we will be back next Sunday at the same time, 4 p.m. Eastern. Again, feel free to reference that Bible study guide if you want to go a little bit deeper in your reading this week. It's a little bit shorter of a time because we had the first 11 days. Now we just have 7. So read a couple a day or do what you need to do so that you can join us next Sunday. And if you're watching later, thank you. Appreciate you for reading it and participating as well. Feel free to put any comments in the comments. And yeah, thank you, ladies, for joining me today. I really love our conversation. I think it was so good and encouraging. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.